Welcome to Bernie's News and Views. I'm your host, Don Burgess, and with us today is Her Excellency, the Governor, Rena Lalgie. I hope I pronounced that right. Welcome, Governor.
Thank you very much. It's good to be with you today.
Now, you've been in Bermuda for about 2 months so far. How are you enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it, and I'm definitely, my family and I are really settling in, and it's one of those things where you arrive and you get straight to work. So I'm gradually getting an opportunity to meet people across the island. Although, like most people, looking forward to a time when we can gather more in person.
Now, this morning was the first time I got the chance to say Her Excellency.
You'll be surprised how many letters I still get that say His Excellency.
Your appointment was extremely historic. What does it mean to you to be both the first female and first Black governor?
It's genuinely a sense of I feel a sense of pride. Whenever I see the word historic, though, I have to say it does kind of pull out the introvert in me, because it helps me. It makes me think about and feel really the sense of responsibility that I carry to make sure that I do the very best and demonstrate that actually it is, there's nothing about being the governor of Bermuda that means that it can't be done and done well by a woman or as a Black person.
Why did you apply for Bermuda, and what guiding principles do you have as governor?
I applied to take on this role because I think it's a really important role. I think it's something that genuinely matters, and it is something that I believed at the time, and clearly those who appointed me did as well, that it was something that I could bring the benefit of my experience to. I like a challenge as well, and therefore I was quite drawn to the fact that this was something that would both, whilst I knew that it was something that I could bring a huge amount to, that it would also be a challenge and keep me on my toes, because continuing to grow professionally and personally is something that is really important to me.
And what guiding principles are you bringing to the job?
So I am my kind of values, my personal values, my integrity are incredibly important, and I will bring those to the role. I have also, many would say of me who have worked with me in the past, that I have really sound judgment as well. And I am a good listener. I'm a very active listener, and therefore I think those things will help to guide me as I go through this role. So you asked me earlier about the time on the island so far, but definitely I'm looking forward to being able to have more and more opportunities to hear from the people of Bermuda, so that I can get a better sense of what I can do best to serve within the Constitution.
Now, this is your first time as a governor of one of the dependent territories. Did outgoing Governor John Rankin give you any advice about Bermuda?
So the first thing I'd say, though, is that actually, when I've looked back through many of my predecessors, I think you'd have to go quite far back if at all to find someone who had been a governor elsewhere before they became a governor in Bermuda. So it's not new. So there may well be many firsts about my appointment. It's not new for the governor of Bermuda for this to be their first time as a governor. I spoke to quite a few of the previous governors of Bermuda before taking up this role, but after I was appointed, many of them reached out to me to congratulate me. They were really excited about my appointment and thought that I would be able to bring a huge amount to the job. They obviously told me some of the things that we know to be true. They told me it was a challenging, tough, unique job, but one that I would get a huge amount out of. They told me, your question was specifically about what they told me about Bermuda. So one of the things that a couple of them told me, which is definitely I've already seen even in my short period of time in the role, is that they 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 use the example of sort of when you meet people in Bermuda, and they said that, you know, people will say welcome to Bermuda, and they genuinely mean it. And when people say to you, you know, we hope you enjoy your time in Bermuda, or we hope you enjoy your stay in Bermuda, that's not just a passing nicety. And I feel that even behind the masks and or through the mask on both sides, I feel that genuine warmth from the people that I have met, the people who I have had an opportunity to speak to, or just to be able to wave to from a distance. That sense of a genuine welcome, and also a hope that I will whatever happens, I will enjoy the time that I spend in this island.
Awesome. Now you have a very strong financial background, and how do you feel that financial expertise could be a benefit to Bermuda?
So one of the things, just also kind of reaching back, I suppose, to the point that you made, the question that you asked me earlier about my experience. So I've got a broad range of subject matter experience that I think serves quite well in this job. I've done quite a lot in the national security space, which obviously is quite relevant to the responsibilities that I have as governor, but also on the civil contingency side and resilience, etc. But I do also bring experience in the compliance and wider financial regulatory or economic regulation, should I say more widely, and that I think all helps me to understand some of the issues that are very live and present for Bermuda at the moment. And the work that I've done in the past also helps me to understand some of that sense, or to have a great sense of how to kind of leverage some of the expertise that we can bring to bear from elsewhere, but also how some of these issues play out on the international stage.
I was struck yesterday. I was reading a couple of the letters that you had written about financial compliance and anti-money laundering. And I was thinking about how fitting that is, because a lot of what Bermuda does, its international reputation, depends on making sure this is an above-board jurisdiction.
Yeah. So that is absolutely true, and a key part of my role as governor is absolutely around ensuring that we keep in line with our international obligations, but also there's a broader. I'm also very keen to think, as part of my service, about how I can be of support to the government of Bermuda in its broader efforts. The international standards continue to change, to evolve, and that is for a jurisdiction like Bermuda, which you know really punches above its weight in so many different ways. It's really important to continue to maintain the reputation as a jurisdiction that meets the highest international standards and continues to be in line with its obligations, and is a place where the international business community understands that it has a really sound regulatory framework and an independent judiciary, and all of those things that Bermuda can be incredibly proud of. And continuing to maintain that reputation is incredibly important today, but will be more so as we go forward.
The UK has been providing Bermuda with vaccines. Do you know when the next batch will arrive?
So the first week of March will be the scheduled arrival for the next batch of vaccines that are coming in from the UK.
Speaking of vaccines, you recently had your first one recently.
I did.
What was the experience like for
you? Full of joy, as you can see. Actually, I am in that category of people who, for me, it is an entirely irrational fear. It's not painful. It was a completely painless experience. I've always known, the kind of rational part of my brain always knows that, that it doesn't hurt, and there's nothing to worry about. But needles are not my thing. But I've absolutely had, I think it's really important. I mean, see here in Bermuda, but globally, there's there's quite a challenge for us all, I think, in terms of the hesitancy that exists amongst communities, and in particular amongst Black and minority ethnic communities in some countries. And I think that, you know, that worries me in the way that it is worrying the government of Bermuda, but also governments, you know, the UK government, etc. as well. So I think it's really important that we all do everything that we can to protect ourselves and those that we interact with as well. And like most people, I'm hoping that at some point in the not too distant future, we can return to some of the elements of life that we enjoyed and loved before this pandemic struck.
Okay. The Premier recently said he welcomes deeper engagement with the UN as Bermuda works with other non-sovereign territories to protect against recent actions that signal a renewed push for colonialism by administering powers. What do you think?
I'm not going to commit a breach protocol or do something inappropriate now and attempt to speak for or explain what the Premier of Bermuda has said. What I would say is I think there's a really kind of relationship between the UK and Bermuda, and between the UK and the British Overseas Territories more generally, is one that has changed and evolved quite dramatically over time. And Bermuda is, by most, if all measures, one of the most self-governing of the British Overseas Territories, and the relationship is one that I believe is mutually beneficial. But honestly, on this issue, this is, you know, it kind of doesn't matter a huge amount what I think. The question is really about what the people of Bermuda think of the relationship, and also what they want for the future.
Your Christmas message partly addressed climate change. How much of a role do you think Bermuda can play in this?
I think as an island which is truly blessed, whenever I look around me, whether you're inside a building or outside, there is so much here for us to protect, and so much vulnerability. And Bermuda has a very deep history in terms of the sort of protection of wildlife, of species, both on land and at sea, and for hundreds of years has been an important part of Bermuda's history. I think starting in the 1600s with the protection of turtles and sea turtles. And so there is a huge amount, given the oceans that are around us, that Bermuda can do to continue to protect, and does already do there. But in the space, as we look forward this year to this being a year when governments around the world are gathering and really increasing their focus on climate change, through whether it's kind of COP26 later on this year, the kind of UN sessions, or indeed the G7 meetings that the UK will chair in Cornwall in the summer. That, you know, these discussions give us a real opportunity to think about and not just to think about it, but to start taking action in terms of what can be done here in Bermuda. And I'm quite struck by the opportunities to shift from the kind of reliance on fossil fuels, and also to think about the renewable energy sources. And one of my personal passions in this space, because I do think there are some things which only governments can change, and many of them are things that governments can only change if they work together. And we genuinely take a multilateral approach to it. But there are also things that we can do on an everyday basis. And my children are particularly key in terms of really challenging my husband and I, in terms of the choices that we make, whether it's about the kind of batteries that we use, the light bulbs that we use, or indeed the vehicles that we drive. They are incredibly powerful and meaningful voices in terms of helping us to make some of the shifts that we can control as individuals, as opposed to the ones that really need to be at that governmental level. And I think there's huge potential here. I'd like to see much greater. I'd like to see more sort of solar paneling on the island and more electric vehicles on the road. And there's, given that when we were living in London, things like the sort of range anxiety and worrying if the car was whether we had enough charge to be able to make it to visit relatives in Wales or in the north of England, and where were we going to charge on the kind of way to make those journeys. Those things are quite difficult, are kind of genuine barriers. And on an island this size, with the infrastructure that's here, I think there's huge potential for Bermuda to continue to lead the way in the way that it has done on other issues.
Good. Do you have any other causes that you're passionate about?
So there are things that I'm particularly passionate about as an individual, and some of those opportunities may come through. I'm incredibly passionate about making sure that and this is not a kind of specific to being the governor of Bermuda, but I'm incredibly passionate about the opportunities that young people have, and the role that as adults, as employers, that we play in not just protecting young people, but also making sure that there is much more equality of opportunity than there has been in the past. And I think we've come a huge way from where we've been in the past, but there's still a long way to go on that front. I'm really keen to hear and understand sort of what matters here, and what I can do in my capacity as governor to really move things forward. And like most things, passions change and develop as well. So one thing that I've been really struck by since being here at Government House is, if people who have known me for many years would definitely have been quite surprised, and were surprised by some of the shifts. I know my parents were definitely surprised about the shifts that happened with me during the lockdowns that occurred in the UK last year. Suddenly I moved to someone who was much more kind of interested, not just interested, but active in thinking about growing our own food and growing the sort of herbs that we use to cook with, etc. And that's something that we've brought here to our time, even in our limited time in Government House. So doing a lot more sort of growing some of the food that we eat, and the people that I work with here have been hugely supportive of that, because it's something I was speaking to them about before arriving, and it's been amazing, some of the transitions that we've been able to make in terms of using some of the land to really think about growing some of the foods that we can be more sustainable. So there are things that definitely kind of life teaches you different passions as we go along, and I know that in my time here as well, and the time that I spend in Bermuda, that there will be things that I will learn. There will be issues that I come to understand really matter, and where we can really make a difference, and I will focus my attention there, because I'm very driven by not just improving as an individual, as a professional, but making a difference to kind of every organisation that I work in, every place that I am. And my hope is that I'll be able to look back and I will be able to feel whatever is being said, good or bad, that I'll be able to feel like it was better for me having been here.
Is there anything else to say about or to the Bermudian people?
I'm sorry, you were cutting out slightly when you went through there. I think the question was, is there anything else that I would say, would like to say to the people of Bermuda? For now, I would like to say a huge thank you to everybody who reached out to me before I arrived, who has reached out to me since I've been here to welcome me, to also give me a sense of the to give me a kind of sense of what it means to them, because that has a huge amount of resonance with me, and it drives me and helps me in those kind of difficult and challenging moments. And I really look forward to being able to spend more time genuinely being able to meet people, to understand the issues that matter, and to understand what I can do to serve Bermuda well.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Okay.
Thank you.
And to all our viewers, have a beautiful day.